Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of a podcast called Live. Thank you for listening. My name is Nath Kachera, the host, of course, and today we have a guest star. He is known to some as Shield. He's known to some as DJ Cal 27, but to those dear to his heart, he's known simply as Dylan. Dylan, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know you're a big Huskers fan. Sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, it's a rough road. It's comes with its ups and downs, mainly some downs, but Joba Purdy, mini Brock Purdy, one could hope.
He is going to be the savior of the season. I know it for sure. But of course, we're not here to talk about football. Of course, you can check out my other podcast, Football Why. But anyway, enough of the sponsors, enough of the ads, the namesakes. So what we're really here about, Dylan, we're here to talk about life. Life has wonderful journeys. One could say God works mysterious ways. Well, that's something I wanted to ask you about, and I think it'd be a great thing to talk about on the show. Would be your journey through the military. I know that you're a military guy, but also there's so much mystery and vagueness surrounding that. How'd you get into it? What's going on? So many questions, so little time.
Yeah, so in high school, I always kind of was interested in stuff. So I went to Catholic high school, so it would be a private school. So we didn't have like a bunch of recruiters come onto campus and always talk to us about a lot of stuff. So I ended up finding a recruiter on Facebook and I messaged him and kind of talked back and forth with him a little bit. I got a little bit of information. Some of my friends in high school, we'd always kind of talked about maybe going into the military. So I talked to him a little bit and something just didn't feel right, so I kind of backed off of that a little bit. That was like the summer after junior year of high school. So then senior year came around, football, sports, life kind of happened and kind of just faded to the back burner a little bit. So, senior year comes around, gets close to graduation, figuring out where I want to go to college, end up going to college at USD, and freshman year rolls around, and we get through freshman year, and I meet one of my friends, and she was in ROTC at USD, and there's always kind of been like a little voice in the back of my head that was always just kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe this isn't what it is, I don't know. So end up being friends with her. Again, she's in ROTC, and just end up talking to her one day, hey, I've always kind of thought about this. And so she gets me in touch with her recruiter, and, he did a really good job, answered all my questions, made sure that I was on the same page and I knew exactly what was going to happen. And, I took AP classes. So for those who don't know, it's advanced placement classes in high school. So you take college classes in high school. I was fortunate enough, my school offered that. So I came into college with credits already. So I ended up taking an entire semester off of college and I did basic training and then AIT, which is advanced individual training, all in one semester. So you go to basic training, roughly 10 weeks, and that's where you learn like all the soldiering stuff. So, formations, how to march, how to shoot, how to just be a soldier in the military. And then you go to advanced individual training where you learn to do the job you enlisted for, whether that's heavy truck driver, infantry, whether it's cook, whether it's, mechanic or whatever that job is, that's kind of where you go for that. So went to AIT for 8 weeks and then ended up getting back from that, finished school and applied to grad school and now I'm in grad school and kind of thinking once I graduate grad school, going to school for physical therapy. Once I graduate that, I can direct commission as an officer in the Army. I can stay in the National Guard if I want to and commission as an officer in the Guard, or I have the option to commission active duty as an officer of physical therapy. So it's been great. Military provides a lot of benefits for school and I think for me, like just growing up being a man, like was blessed with very good parents and a very good male role model, but sometimes you take those things for granted and so like going to the military and meeting people who didn't have those opportunities and weren't provided those things really gave me some perspective of, you know, what's really out there in the world and how people live, I mean just to without naming names, a buddy that I met at basic training, he's from New York. and his dad left when he was 2 years old, and his mom's been in prison for 15 years. So it was him and his brother, and they didn't have anybody else. The foster system kind of they burned out of the foster system. Nobody wanted them. They got to a point where they were old enough where nobody really wants like a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old kid, right? So a lot of people just kind of passed him by. So his older brother joined a gang so that they could put food on the table, essentially. And it got to the point where his brother was getting into some rough stuff. And basically, the kid that I knew, his younger brother, joined the military so that he didn't have to live that life. And so, from a kid from South Dakota, with a
Yeah.
good family upbringing, a good father and mother, and good siblings, and good relationship with my family, like to get to meet somebody like that, and he just talks about it so casually, you know.
Yeah.
And so it just gives you some perspective outside of anything to do with political stuff or anything like that. You just meet so many people and just learn so many different things. So I mean, it's been great for me, and here we are, and haven't looked back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I guess to, realize how blessed you are. Isn't that amazing? Like,
Yeah,
just you get humbled so quickly and just meeting different people around the world. That's bottom line, awesome.
absolutely,
Is there anything else you want to touch up on the military there? Like everything the military's done from you. I know it's helped you through school quite a bit.
absolutely.
Um, do you have a couple stories, maybe a couple funny ones about basic training or
Sure,
something?
sure. So there was a so something you do at basic training, and so I went to basic training at Fort Jackson in South Carolina. We went or I was there from May to July, so it was probably 95, 100 degrees, 100% humidity, and you're in full uniform and full kit for a good amount of it, so that's always a fun time. But we did this thing called Victory Tower, where it's a rappel tower, where you're 100 feet up in the air and you rappel down the tower. So they obviously teach you how to do everything. They've got instructors who are certified in it and teach you how to tie the harness yourself, and then they check your harness. Do all the good safety stuff, but there was a kid who was terrified of heights.
Yeah.
So they basically what they had to do was basically have a drill sergeant above him and below him, and they basically like baby Bjorned him down the tower because the kid was in tears crying at the top of the
Oh
tower. And,
no.
of course, drill sergeants have a heyday with that. So everyone was just standing there staring at this kid screaming bloody murder and crying and snot's going everywhere. And he's just like moving down the tower like 3 inches at a time.
Oh
Most people
no.
jump and then come back to the wall and you'll jump away from the wall. This kid was like just walking backwards very slowly down the wall. So yeah, that was a pretty good one. That's always fun. I mean, and then you have the stories of like, oh, so and so did something stupid. So at 2 in the morning, we got the door kicked in the barracks, and they yelled at us, and everybody got up, and we went out and ran a mile because somebody did something they never really tell you, but you blink and you wake up about halfway through, and you're like, oh, this is great.
Sounds like quite the punishment there. I guess I don't envy you in that aspect or anything like that. But yeah, very interesting. Also, I do want to touch up on Thanksgiving as that's coming up close here. But I will say that you are, in fact, the Dylan that we mentioned in our last podcast about being our bruiser on our co-ed basketball team that was one game away from a championship. Woo woo. Dang it, Brock, I'm calling you out. But do you have any fond memories from our co-ed team playing basketball?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy because Eric, who's been on this podcast
Yep,
before,
yep.
he and I went to high school together. So, and we roomed all 4 years of college together. So I actually met Nate through basketball.
Yeah.
So that's how Nate and I met, was through co-ed basketball, and how I met one of our other really good friends, Zach. We were just playing pickup basketball in the gym. I think I had just got done lifting, and I went over, and I think Eric had a class with Zach, or
No, it
was in a
sounds
lab or
right.
something. And so ended up just running into two random dudes at the gym. We played a pickup game of basketball, and they were like, kind of like, "Oh, you guys want to make a co-ed basketball team?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not? Right? Might as well. Don't have anything better to do." So then, yeah, we ended up doing that every year, and Nate and I became really good friends, and Zach and I became good friends, and what started as just a pickup game for me, like. the co-ed basketball was fun and everything and almost making the championship. But what was really cool is I got two of my best friends, to this day. Here we are, what, 5, 6 years later, you
Yeah.
know. Uh,
To this day.
yeah, from a pickup game of basketball to co-ed basketball. Got two of my best friends in the world out of it. But I would say, like, specifically basketball wise, I remember the year that we got Joey to play on our team, and we
Oh
finally
yeah.
had somebody that I didn't have to guard the biggest guy on the floor anymore. I was so happy about it because I'm like 5'11" and 3/4, 6 foot. And I'm guarding guys that are like 6'4", 6'5", because Eric is like 6'2", but he likes to guard people who are a little bit faster. And I was, again, as Nate mentioned, I was a little bit more physical than most people were. So I guarded the biggest guy on the court, and thankfully Joey, who's like 6'5", and now I had an excuse to not have to guard those kind of people. So felt a lot better about myself, not getting basically destroyed in the paint because I literally put my hands up and it comes up to the guy's nose, and then he just kind of sets the ball on the hoop. So that's fun, but
Classic. You gotta love it. Good b-balling and all that. But yeah, let's cut to the second half of the segment. Thanksgiving. I know Eric and I had mentioned a few things in the previous podcast, but so for Thanksgiving wise, first of all, what traditions do you and your family have?
I mean, I would say we have a pretty typical Midwestern family tradition. We go to the grandparents' house and everybody comes there. We do turkey, all the green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, everything like that. We do the big food, everything, and we just kind of hang out and play games. It's truly nothing big or crazy, and we don't have any like super wacky traditions, but it's really nice because I'm a big family person. So for me, it's nice. I don't get to see my grandparents super often. They live out in Omaha. So between school and like everybody working and things like that, and the grandparents are getting older, it's nice to be able to go out there and just relax, hang out, eat a lot of good food, and play some games. We typically like to play like card games, so like hearts or something like that. That's typically what my grandma and grandpa like to do. So, nothing too crazy, kind of the typical, movie. Oh, everyone goes out to the family for Thanksgiving and a bunch of good food, good people, and everything. So, and it's different now. It's my older brother and sister are both married. So now, sometimes we have like 2 or 3 Christmases because it's, oh, Christmas with the family, Christmas with the in laws, and then Christmas with, extended family and things like that. So, it's always just a juggling act to try and get everybody there and figure out all the logistics of who's going to be where when and things like that. So,
Sure, sure. So this game Hearts, it intrigues me. Give us a play-by-play analysis of that. I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about, but
mm,
maybe I do.
yeah, so basically, Hearts is a game where you just play with a deck of cards, and what you don't want to do is end up with a bunch of hearts. So the hearts are how you get points. The way you got to do it is you either give people your hearts or you play without going into the super huge in-depth description of how to play hearts. Basically, you don't want to end up with the heart cards, so like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to king and ace. Or what you want is to shoot the moon, so you take all of the hearts, you get all of the points, and then you end up winning. So basically, you suck so bad that the game feels bad for you, so you win.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like my kind of game, if you know what I mean.
Yep, that's what I try to do.
Oh man. So another question though. Let's think about this, right? Like a future perspective. So let's say you want to do something wild and crazy, but like Thanksgiving themed.
Right.
What would it be? Like skydiving out of Macy's turkey? Like, where are you going with this?
Honestly, I think for me, it would be who I had at Thanksgiving. I don't think I'd want to do anything like crazy that wise. I would have it be
Okay,
crazy by who I bring to Thanksgiving.
ideal Thanksgiving turkey. Who are you bringing to share this meal? What's going on? Ideal Thanksgiving. Go.
All right, Jason Kelsey's going to be there. Travis Kelsey's going to be there. Has to be done. I think on top of that, I would probably go with. It's a good question.
Indeed.
Travis, Jason Kelsey. I would say probably like Chris Hemsworth, just because I like him as Thor. Um, who else? Oh, Joe Rogan, I'd want to be there, and then probably like Jocko Willink. I don't know if a bunch of people know who he is, but he's a retired Navy SEAL commander, and he's just kind of crazy with all the things that he's accomplished. So I'd like to see him for that reason. Joe Rogan, because he's Joe Rogan. He's great conversationalist, you know, great interviewer, great just individual of character and things like that. And then Jason Kelsey, because he's the best center to ever play football for the best team to ever play football. And then Travis Kelsey, because I just like those two together. They're hilarious. So,
I could just picture it now. Travis Kelsey, Jason Kelsey, just fighting over a turkey leg while they're doing a play-by-play of how to play football.
right,
Joe Rogan, he's interviewing everybody in the room. Anything that moves. One minute he's like, stuffing. How do you stuff the stuffing? Next minute he's like, yeah, anybody can make cranberry.
right.
And then you have Jocko Willis, who's just like putting everybody in a chokehold, making them tap out. And then I just see madness around the room.
Oh,
And I love it.
grandma's got to be there too because she cooks the best food in the world. So
And
she's
Grandma's
got to be there
swinging an
too.
iron pan at somebody. Oh, but what does she cook the best?
Ooh,
I love food, just
her
saying.
green bean casserole is pretty undeniable. She cooks good turkey. She's just a really good cook in general, but her green bean casserole is pretty much to die for. I mean, that's
Wow.
my mother is a phenomenal cook, and that is the only thing that my grandma, I think, for whatever reason, just you could do the same recipe, same everything, wouldn't taste the same. Just doesn't. Whatever she does, it is what it is. Can't be beat.
Oh my goodness. Can't be beat. Well, I would say for me personally, for Thanksgiving, I think I am going to bring a bunch of sports personality in the arena. I want Pat McAfee. I want
Ooh, that's
Bob
a good one.
Uecker. I'm going to throw out like Max Crosby. I just want a lot of persona. I also want Patrick Mahomes there. Just him though, not his extended family. Maybe his dad though. I think his dad would be
I
cool.
think so too.
Holmes Senior, just because wild stories about him from the Canaries in
Right,
South Dakota.
right.
If nobody knew that, those of you listening, he did play for a South Dakota semi-pro team.
Yep,
He didn't practice, and he had a microscopic ERA under one. So that's insane. And it was like, I think a .59.
that's
So
insane.
that's giving up less than half a run a game.
That's pretty cool. That's all right. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame here, of course, but he pitched 11 seasons in the majors. But I want to see some of those people as well as probably Bill Belichick. I just want to hear him talk,
Interesting. Yeah,
to
that's
see if he says more than yeah, no, no, yes.
it would be interesting to sit down in a room with him and just see who he is as an actual person, like outside of like, because obviously he hates interviews and the media, and
Sure,
you can
sure.
tell just by the way he acts. But it would be interesting just to sit down in a room and like talk to that guy, because like hearing some of his former players and people just talk about him, they obviously have a lot of respect for him. So it's just it'd be interesting to sit down in a room with him and see what he has to say.
Also, a guy like John Daly, the golfer,
Right.
the only person to beat Tiger Woods drunk. I
Yeah,
mean, such a functioning alcoholic, but good Lord Almighty,
I remember.
he is something to a sight to behold.
I remember hearing a story. They were playing a tournament, him and Tiger was out there, practicing and hitting some golf balls and hit the gym and everything. And John Daly's just sitting in the bar drinking and having some food. And Tiger Woods walks by, and apparently John Daly ended up beating him the next day. So Tiger did all of the right things. John Daly was like, I'm just kind of here, and then showed up and just played crazy. Like, yeah, that guy is just a whole other animal.
That reminds me of a guy named Max McGee. Do you know who Max McGee
You
is?
know,
Wild guess.
baseball player.
Good guess because I do love baseball. Former Green Bay Packer receiver.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Second guess. Anyway, so in Super Bowl one, right? He was the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Right.
And you know what he was doing? He was up till 3 a.m. at I think either a gentleman's club or a just bar hopping spree, right?
Oh,
Because he was like the fifth string wide receiver. He was in his 30s and he's like, there's no way I'm going to play.
playing this
No way I'm
game.
playing. And it turned out one of their receivers got hurt and he's in. And he's like, oh dear God, like smelling salts. Somebody get me
Right.
some,
Wake me up a little bit.
He ends up being the Super Bowl MVP. He has a catch
Golly.
that you can Google because this is from, I think, like the 1960s, I want to say, is when Super Bowl one was. I want to say 64,
I
but I
think
could
you're
be
right. No,
mistaken.
I think you're right.
Bart Starr throws a pass in the end zone. off his hands, catches it, bobbles it, catches it with one arm towards his helmet, like he's carrying a boombox in the 90s.
Doing OBJ stuff before OBJ did.
Literally. So he has a couple touchdowns, phenomenal game, and he's like, boys, I just need to take a nap.
I just need to go home and
Like
sleep.
everybody's popping champagne. He's got like sunglasses in the locker room, and he's like, dude, not again.
He's just like, somebody get me a bed.
It's a bed and two Bloody Marys, probably. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's just crazy things like that. I do love that in sports, just like the unpredictabilities.
Yeah.
The underdog winning. Do you have any good underdog stories? Just bounce around in that brain of yours.
Well, I mean, so my dad and my mom, when they got married, they were very poor, like very, very
Okay,
poor. So like my dad does very, very well for himself now,
sure.
but like he was working 3 or 4 jobs. My mom got pregnant, had my sister, and so now he's got a wife and a kid to take care of. So he's working
Yeah.
3 or 4 jobs, being an underdog. And my grandparents. So my grandpa was in the Navy for a lot of years, and my grandmother was a nurse in the operating room. So once they retired, they had a lot of money coming in because my grandpa, when he got out of the Navy, worked at a steel mill for like 45 years.
Holy
Yeah, worked at the same
cow.
place for forever. And so did my grandmother. So their pensions were crazy because my grandpa got his naval pension and he got the pension from the steel mill, and my grandma got her pension from the hospital. So once they retired, they did very, very well for themselves. But once, when they were growing up, they weren't making a ton of money. So my dad basically came from nothing, ended up getting into college and could afford college purely based on a football scholarship. Um, I mean, he was a whopping 5 foot 11, 5'10", like 185 pounds, played center and right guard.
Wow.
Went on to be like 6 foot, finished growing. He was like 6 foot 260 and just a monster of a
Jeez.
human being, and still is to this day. He's 57 now and still can bench press 365 pounds. So he's doing okay.
What?
But he went and played semi-professional football, and ended up having kids, and worked multiple jobs the whole time. So like he was just an absolute workhorse of a human being, and worked his way up the job ladder, and
Yeah.
obviously is where he is now and does very well for himself. And so that's, for me, that's the biggest underdog story. Not that he was discounted by everybody, but there was a lot of things that he could have not done and wouldn't be in the position that he is today. So again, kind of referencing what we talked about earlier, I'm very fortunate in that sense of like, there's a saying that I always love, and it's hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that to me is like a true scenario of, no, like that actually can happen, and it does happen. You may not see it now, but
Johnny
eventually.
Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, right? Probably one of the most athletically and just gifted athletes on the planet, just didn't care, right?
Yep.
Didn't care about it, nothing at all. And then you got a guy like, not to reference the Eagles, but a guy like Jalen Hurts, who traded or transferred around in college, kind of looked down on. They were like, he'll be all right, and he's playing great football, and anything you hear about him is, well, he's put in more hours in the film room than anybody else. He's in the weight room more than anybody else.
He
He's,
squats 600
yeah, as a
pounds as
quarterback.
a quarterback.
Yeah, and he's out there like holding other guys accountable for their jobs and everything, and making sure they get their film in. And if they're not, he will go in the room and sit with them and watch it. And like, so like, just people like that, that's something to me that really sticks out. And I think my dad, in a more at home sense, for me, was a very good role model in that way. So and that's just kind of how his dad was too. His dad, or my grandpa, was just a very like indestructible man's man. Like, I'm not going to let the world get me down. I'm just going to work harder and outwork all my problems. And you know, that's just kind of something that I value. Looking at life, it's not always sunshines and rainbows. Everybody's, nobody goes through the same life, right? Everybody's got their problems. Everybody's been through things that other people haven't. And so like, to look at somebody and be able to, fortunately for me, to be able to look at it in my father's sense of just, not having next to anything, to making a good living and having a good life with a good family and everything like that, that to me is a great underdog story of, it doesn't have to be rich in fame or anything like that, but it can be starting from humble beginnings and getting to somewhere where you're always comfortable, you're happy with life, and that's something that I think a lot of people can take for granted. You know, it's not all about how much money you get, how famous you are, or anything like that. You know, I think working hard for the things that you have and having a good family, or you know, if family isn't in your cards, right? You know, having good friends, having a good circle of people around you. You know, I think that can be a good underdog story of, you know, not necessarily starting with those things. You know, some people struggle with like social anxiety. So a good underdog story could even be, hey, I made 2 friends this year. Right? I mean, that's huge for that person. That's like a monumental change. You know, so I think while underdog stories and like, you know, going from, oh, I was flat broke to now I'm like, look at Steve Harvey, right?
Sure,
He's
yeah.
a, you know, game show host of a family or Family Feud. Yeah, Family Feud. And like he was a comedian for a long time. He lived in his car and everything like that. And you know, he's a pretty humble guy, but you know, he always says, you know, you don't have to be rich and famous. You know, I don't do this to be rich and famous. I do it because it's what I love and it's what I like to do. And I think a lot of times people miss those kind of messages. So you know, I think underdog stories are amazing, and I think they're all around you. You know, you just have to get to know people, and like you know, that's kind of like your point of this podcast, right? It's life.
Yeah,
Everybody's
life.
got a different life, man, and it's cool to sit down and talk with somebody about what they've been through and where they want to go. You know, the things that it takes to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, life. What is life? You know, there's so many different realms of possibilities where you can go, the choices you make, who do you become, who do you look up to,
Right.
who's around you, what makes you you, what makes you tick. And I think a lot of your stories today, I love it. It's so encouraging, positive. That's what we want to bring is positivity, man. Because no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, success is the eye of the beholder. I feel
Absolutely.
like in our generation, we were solely brought up with like, if you don't go to college, you will not be successful.
Right.
I feel like that was beaten into my head senseless. Like to the point of knockout after knockout. And then once you do finish college and you try to get to the job spectrum and you try to do something with your life, you're like, oh, wait, if I went to a tech school for something, I'd be doing just as much. Or, if I started working a 9 to 5 job right out of high school, I'd be just as successful.
Right.
Like if you're contributing to society, if you're doing something that you don't hate, now you don't even have to do what you love. You can always do like a hobby. You can always do something else that you actually love. Like, you just contribute, just be yourself, just do what you can do.
Yep.
Don't let other people tell you what you can and cannot do, but always keep it realistic. Don't be like, I want to be an astronaut, but don't put in the work.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know, just little things. But speaking of astronauts, that reminds me of Dobbs, Joshua Dobbs. How cool would it be to be a quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings and also basically be an astrophysicist? Is that something like he is? He's
That's
something
something like that. Yeah, I heard
with
about
like
that.
NASA and whatever.
Yeah.
But like I don't think it's actually NASA because NASA isn't a thing anymore.
Right. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it
I
is,
think
but
he
that's pretty
interned at
crazy.
NASA once upon a time, but
It's crazy.
that's absolutely insane. And when you see his parents watch the game, because they've been at both or all three games this year, they are some intelligent people. Like
Yeah.
we're talking masters, doctrines. I'm like, wow, just
Yep.
to be that gifted and you're
Yeah.
playing football as a hobby.
No, I know it's crazy. And you know, and playing at the highest level and making how much money doing so just because it's something that you love. But you know, you had other options of you know being an astrophysicist or whatever it
Solving
was.
world
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah. I don't play football instead. Nah.
Yeah, it'll be all right. That actually reminds me, right? So he's got actually several different degrees or whatever. That reminds me of a guy in I think I want to say it's like the 1950s, whenever World War II was, so it might have been
Yeah.
the 40s.
Yep.
So there's this guy who played with Babe Ruth in the 20s. He was a backup catcher. I don't remember his name. It's gonna haunt me. I remember his story. So he was basically a spy because he would play baseball in the 20s. He was a professional baseball player. He played for three different teams. I think he went to Princeton, and he got I think three or four master's degrees and then
Truth.
doctorates while playing baseball
Truth.
after he graduated with 2 degrees from Princeton.
That's right. I
And he came
suppose.
from a family of like lawyers, doctors, and he became a spy. And then after that, because he was in a something that would become the CIA, I believe,
Yep.
the forebearer, whatever.
Yep.
Oh man, I wish I had more details. I do. I just forgot them. Alas. But anyway, this guy, just a big guy. They call him the professor and stuff like that. Super cool. But you know what he did after all of that?
Hmm.
He died in debt
That's crazy, dude.
because he didn't do anything else afterwards. He would just ride his cottontails of fame of being a backup catcher on a baseball team,
Yeah.
pro wise, and just chill with his like homies, like Lou Gehrig or Babe Ruth or whatever, and be like, "Hey man, what's up tonight? You got me. You got my son."
Yeah. I'll get you next time.
And then I see guys like you're talking about, like a Jalen Hurts or a Joshua Dobbs right now, and they're still going. They're still working.
Right.
And like you said, that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I think of many guys in the NFL, or baseball wise, who are just like, yeah, man, like Ken Griffey Jr., a big name in baseball, he never ever um, read scouting reports
Right.
when his first like 10 years or whatever before he was traded to the Reds on Seattle with his dad, he's like, yeah, I just showed up and just hit,
Right.
react.
Right.
And it's like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And then he started to do, scouting reports as he got older, slower, whatever. But I just think like you can only ride so long on just
Right.
like pure talent.
Right.
So let's say you were born to be a paper clipper. Like you're the best person to clip papers.
Right.
Well, you have to keep working to be better because somebody's always better. Like a Tim
Yep.
Tebow example, dude. Somebody's always going to be stronger than you. He's like, I'm the strongest guy in this gym.
Right.
But what about the millions of gyms around the world?
Right. There's
I'm
always
like,
somebody that's going to be more talented than you. 100%. You can
yeah,
be hometown hero of whatever you want to be, right? But eventually you're going to go somewhere, and you see that a lot in college, right? Like with a lot of not just college athletes, but even like if you talk like academics, hey, I'm the smartest guy in my town. I never had to try in high school. And
sure,
then you show up and like I've seen it in grad school, I'm in grad school for physical therapy and I'm surrounded by a lot of intelligent people who I think are a lot more intelligent than I am
sure.
and some of them never struggled in undergrad, so when they got to grad school and it was at a pace and the level of information was a lot harder to understand, they didn't know how to study, so they struggled because they're like, I've never had to like write before.
Yes,
Whereas like for me, I'm very grateful that I've had to do that, and I've had to try and I've been through hard stuff, so I'm like, you know what, like I have the tools to do this, I know how to do this. And I think that's something that goes overlooked a lot of times is, people look around and they go, well, this person just rides the coattails of life. Like,
yeah,
eventually it'll run out. It may not be that day, that year, the next 10 years, right? But knowing that you've done everything that you can do is something that I think is a value or like a trait that a lot of people overlook because it's not about everybody else, right? Like XYZ person, whatever they want to do, they can do. But as long as I've tried as hard as I can and done everything that I can and I'm satisfied with my day's work, I think that's something to be spoken for.
absolutely. I think, as you're saying, adversity, it's
Hmm.
not always a bad thing.
Nope.
Just because you struggle doesn't mean better things aren't around the corner. But also it could not, and you could just keep the boat turning, keep
Yep.
moving, keep rowing, keep getting on that paddle, and eventually you'll get out of the lake, or maybe the lake's your home.
Exactly.
It's all about the eye of the beholder.
Absolutely.
I don't know, life just truly is just one giant big mystery.
It is.
And either you love it or you don't, or you learn to love it,
Yep.
or you learn not to. Sometimes it's just up to you, listeners out there. So, closing up, final thoughts. I know Christmas is around the corner, so I'll be brief about this. What are your top three Christmas movies, either right now, or ever, or just even upcoming?
Yeah. Favorite movie of all time is Christmas Story with Little Ralphie.
Oh,
Has to be done.
yes.
Jim Carrey's The Grinch. Not the animated one, the one where it was, I don't know if you would call it like live action, but where they had him
Sure.
like dress up in the Grinch costume and stuff. That one's my favorite. And then some people may not consider this a Christmas movie, but Home Alone, always a classic.
Classic.
Always a classic. Those got to be my top three.
Oh man, so I love Home Alone as well. I love Elf.
That's a good one.
And then I just got to go with like Hallmark movies, like
Yep.
those cheesy rom-coms.
Yep.
I just eat that up.
Dude, my mom always is watching the Hallmark Channel. Anytime I go home or like around my folks' house, the Hallmark Channel's always on around
Dude,
Christmas.
you got to get that 25 Days Till Christmas. I mean, come on, man. No, it's just something about like knowing that something good happens at the end, you
Right.
know, just a real feel good story
Oh
to
yeah.
kick off your morning, your night, your afternoon. It doesn't matter, all three. Oh man, get some chicken leftovers from Thanksgiving, couple cold ones on a salami, you know, get some bread going
Oh yeah.
there. Watch some Hallmarks, all you
Right.
gotta do. Maybe some leftover apple juice, dude. I mean, you love it. Can't beat it. All right, well, thanks for being on the show.
Oh
I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, thank you for listening to a show called Life.
Smart Sound.
And thank you for listening to our podcast called Life. Thank you for listening. Please listen again. We'll be trying to drop every single day on a Wednesday.